Hi, my name is Annie. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna be showing you how to make this really cute violet granny square. This granny square is part of my state flower granny square project, and violet is the state flower of Illinois, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Wisconsin. And in the case of Wisconsin, the state flower is officially a wood violet. Two things before we get started with the tutorial. First of all, this is an easy intermediate level tutorial. So if you have really done any crochet before, you know some basic crochet stitches and techniques, I'm sure you can follow along with this tutorial. However, if you're very new to crochet, I would recommend you start with one of my beginner-friendly tutorials before moving on to this one, because I'm not going to go into as much detail in very basic crochet techniques as I do in my beginner-friendly tutorials. A second thing to mention is that this is my original design. You are more than welcome to use the squares that you make with this tutorial in any of your crochet projects. The only thing that I ask is that you give me credit for the design. I will include super easy guidelines in the description of this video on how you can give me credit for the design. To make this granny square, you are going to need yarn, of course, 4 different colors if you want to make yours in 4 colors like I've done here. Today I'm using slightly different colors for the squares, so I'll use this light yellow for the center part of the flower, and then I'll use this darker purple for the petals, and then I'll do this lighter green for the leaves around it, and then the brown for the border. But you can of course choose any colors that you like. The yarn that I'm using is this 100% cotton yarn. It's a number 3 lightweight yarn. Other things that you need are, of course, a crochet hook in the size that matches the yarn weight that you picked, a yarn needle for weaving in your ends, and a pair of scissors. So we are going to start our granny square from the middle. So we're going to make this center part first. And for the center part, we are going to need 10 single crochet stitches. And I'm going to start my square by making a slip knot. And putting it on my hook. And then I chain 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I join this into a ring by slip stitching here into this very first stitch. If you prefer starting your granny squares with a magic ring, you can also do that. So then I'm going to chain 1 stitch. And now I'm going to work my single crochets around this ring that I just created. It's a little bit hard to see the ring for the first stitch, but then it becomes a lot more obvious. So to make a single crochet, I insert my hook in the very center, the very middle of this ring. So be careful not to insert there where you see that obvious hole. Have to pull it apart a little bit more to see the center there. So I pull the yarn through, yarn over, and pull through too. There's my single crochet. And now I can see the center a lot better. Work another one. So we need 10 single crochets. For me, I count that first chain 1 that I chained right after joining this ring. I count that as one of my single crochets. Now, I know there are people who don't count that chain 1 as a single crochet. If you don't count it as a single crochet, that's totally fine. The only thing really that matters is that we'll have 10 stitches on the outside of your work. I'm gonna show you how I count mine, and then you can make sure that however you count your stitches, however you close your round, you have 10 stitches on the outside, because that's what we need for our next round. So keep working the single crochets around the ring. Let's see how many I have here. So single crochets for me are really hard to count there on the inside, so I count them here on the outside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm gonna count the loop on my hook as 1, 2, so I have 9 right now. I need one more single crochet before I can close this round. Okay, and for me to close the round, I like to go here to this very first stitch that's kind of on the outside. So this one here. So I'll just insert my hook in that stitch through both loops and pull the yarn through and pull it through the loop on my hook. And then I can break my yarn. Chain 1 and pull that yarn through. Okay, now I'm going to show you one more time how I count my stitches. So I count them here on the outside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I count the stitch that I just slip stitched into as one of the stitches that I'm going to be working into for the next round. All right, we're going to start working on the petals next. And for this square, we are making these beautiful 3D petals. And as we can see here, these top 2 petals here are wider than these 3 bottom petals. And they are also a little bit shorter. So these 3 are a little bit taller. And I'm going to show you how to do that. We are going to start the petals at this point, so kind of in the middle of these 2 wider top petals. So go ahead and bring in your next color. I'm using this darker purple for this square. So I start by making a slip knot and putting it on my hook. And then I attach my yarn into one of these stitches here on the outside. So remember how we made sure we have 10. So I'm going to go ahead and attach my yarn into one of those 10 stitches on the outside of my work. Just like that. If you have a different way of attaching your yarn that you prefer, feel free to use your way. There we go. And I'm going to start by chaining 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And then I'm going to move on to the next stitch here on the outside. So I attach my yarn here. I'm going to move into the next stitch and I'm going to work 4 double crochet stitches into that same stitch. So yarn over, insert in the next stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. Let's make another one. Yarn over, insert in the same stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So just double crochet stitches. I have 2 so far. I need 2 more. Double crochet stitches. Here we go. And then I'm going to chain 2 again. And now I'm going to slip stitch this into the next stitch. Okay, so not in the same one where I have those 4 double crochets, but I move on to the next stitch and I slip stitch. And I chain 3. And now I'm going to start one of those taller petals, but I'm actually going to take a break here and take care of this yarn end. So this is how I like to weave in my ends as I go. I turn my work around and I pull this yarn through these back loops. I will link to a full tutorial of this method in the description of this video, so if you want to check that out, you can do that. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here, but this is how I like to do this to make sure that the ends get woven into 2 different directions, and I have as little ends as possible at the end once I'm done with this square. Okay, that was that part. You can skip that if you prefer weaving in your ends in a different way. So I'm here. I have just chained those 3 stitches, and this is where I'm going to start one of the taller petals. So I chain 3, and now I'm going to work 2 treble crochets in the next stitch. So not here where I slip stitched the previous petal, those chain 2 and then chain 3 stitches, but in the next one I'll work a treble crochet. So treble crochet is exactly the same as double crochet, just 1 more yarn over. So yarn over twice, insert in the stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So I work 2 treble crochets in that same stitch, and now I'm going to chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to slip stitch in the next stitch. Okay, so not where I have these 2 stitches, but in the next stitch here on the outside. There's my second petal. Okay, and I'm going to start another one right from here. So I chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then I work 2 treble crochets again in the next stitch. So yarn over twice, I insert in the next stitch here on the outside, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2, and another treble crochet in this same stitch. I will chain 3 again after those 2 treble crochets. 1, 2, 3. And now I will slip stitch in the next stitch. So not where I have those 2 treble crochets, but here the next stitch on the outside. Pull that tight to secure it. And I chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Now, as we can see here, I have one of those wider petals here and then 2 of these taller bottom petals. And I'm going to work one more of those taller petals. So 2 treble crochets in the next stitch here. Not where I slip stitched and chained those 3, but in the next one. And then I chain 3 stitches again. 1, 2, 3. And I slip stitch again in the next stitch. So not where I have those 2 treble crochets, but in the next stitch here, the outside. That was tight. Pull the yarn tight. And now I need one more petal, and it's going to be the other wider top petal. So I will chain 2. And then I will work 4 double crochets in the next stitch. So double crochet stitches in this next stitch. And one more double crochet. Stitches do get a little tight, especially when you're weaving in your ends as you go, but it can be done. Okay. And now to finish this petal and to close this round, I'm going to chain 2 again. And now I'm going to slip stitch into this very same stitch where we started this round. So where I've chained those first 2 stitches and attached my yarn, that's where I'm going to slip stitch. There we go. I pull the yarn tight. And now here is my violet. And next, before we can start working on this background and the square, we're going to be working loops of chain stitches behind each petal. And basically these loops are what's going to allow us to build the rest of the square around it. And I'm going to use the same color for the loops. In the final square, we actually don't see the loops because we're going to cover them up with the next round. So we're just going to keep going with this color. So I'm here between these top 2 petals. I have just slip stitched here to close the round. And now I might need to pull these petals apart a little bit because we're going in between these 2 petals. I'm going to chain 3 right from here. 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm going to be working behind my work, so I'm going to need to pull these petals down a little bit to be able to see what I'm doing. So I chain 3 there, and I'm going to secure, this is the first loop, I'm going to secure it between these 2 petals here. So this is where the loop starts. It goes kind of over that petal, and I slip stitch here. I like to pick up 1 stitch from this petal and 1 stitch from that petal to secure the loop. And I just pull the yarn through those 2 and pull the yarn through the loop of my hook. There's my first loop. I'm going to work another one. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and now again secure it between the next 2 petals. There's my second loop. So I'll work another one. 1, 2, 3, and I secure it between these 2 petals. So I pick up 1 stitch here and then another stitch on the other side. One, 2, 3. And secure it here. One more. 1, 2, 3. And now this is where I started that first loop. But here I like to do the exact same thing. So I pick up 1 stitch from this side, and then I pick up another stitch from the other side. I just pull the yarn through. And now to make this extra secure, I like to go here and slip stitch to the start of this first loop, like that. And chain 1, and I can break my yarn. And pull and fasten off. So here is our violet, and now if I turn this around, I'll see that I have these loops here behind each petal. And the next round we're going to be working into these loops. So let's start our next round. So go ahead and bring in your background color. I'm going to start with this green, and I'm going to create kind of these leaves around the violets. And I will start with the slip knot again. And I'll put the slip knot on my hook. And now we are going to attach this yarn behind this petal here. So see how these are the 2 top petals, these 2 wider petals. We are going to attach our yarn here behind this petal. So one of the top petals. And why it matters where we attach our yarn is because we want our violet to sit kind of straight on the square, so that we have these 2 top petals on top, and then we have the 3 bottom petals here. on the other side. So here, so that's why it matters where we attach our yarn. So we're gonna go here and attach the yarn right at the start of that loop behind this petal. So attach your yarn whichever way you prefer attaching your yarn. I like to pull it tight there to make sure it stays there. And then I will chain 2 stitches. And now for this round, all that we're going to do is we're going to cover up those loops with half double crochet stitches. So we're going to be creating 4 half double crochets into each one of the loops we made on the previous round. And now this chain 1 that I just chained here, this is going to count as my first half double crochet. And I work another one. So half double crochets, just yarn over, insert in the space, okay? Not into an individual stitch. In the space, pull the yarn through, yarn over and pull through 3. Yarn over, insert in the space, pull the yarn through, yarn over and pull through 3. Here we go. I have 4 half double crochets, including that initial chain 2. So then I'll just move on straight to the next loop here. Yarn over, insert in the space, pull the yarn through, yarn over and pull through 3. So this is how we work all around. Just 4 half double crochets into each one of the loops, and to move from one loop to another, you just go straight into the next loop, just like this. I have 4 half double crochets there. And then I'll just move on straight into the next one. 4 half double crochets into the next one too. So go ahead and work around yours, making 4 half double crochets into each one of those loops, and then meet me back here. All right, I have worked 4 half double crochets into each one of those 5 loops, and now I'll go ahead and close this round. So here to close, I like to go here. So remember how we chained 2 stitches here. I like to go to that second one to close the round. But as always, you do you. You can close your round however you like. Now the only important thing again is that we have 20 stitches here on the outside for our next round. So we do want to make sure that when we close our round, we don't like accidentally get rid of a stitch there or anything like that. So do double check that you still have 4 stitches on that loop. And now to start our next round, I'm going to slip stitch my way to the second stitch, counting from here. So this is where I'm currently at. This is the petal, and I'm going to count from the spot where these 2 petals meet. So this is the first stitch on this loop, and this is the first stitch on that loop, okay? So I'm going to count to the second stitch. So 1 and 2, and I'm going to slip stitch my way here. And now again, why it matters where we start is so that we can position that flower straight on the square, which takes a little bit of math, especially since we have the 5 petal flower on a square that has 4 sides. It takes a little bit of math for this next round, but I'm gonna explain very slowly so you can follow along. Okay, now I'm gonna double check that I'm in the right stitch. So again, I'm counting from here. This is the stitch number 1, okay? So it's kind of the stitch here on the outside that's on top of this first stitch on this loop. Okay, so 1, 2. Okay, I'm currently on the stitch number 2 here. And now I still have 1 and 2 stitches on this loop. So I have the 4 stitches in the loop, and I didn't accidentally get rid of one. Okay, because then this stitch here counts as a stitch for that loop. So now I'm going to start the second or the next round from here by making one of these corners. Excuse me. And for this round, we're going to be making half double crochet stitches still, okay? And we're basically just creating the corners of the granny square. So we're going to turn this into a square. So I'm going to start right here where I'm at, okay? Again, it's the second stitch counting from the spot where these two petals join. And I'm going to chain 2. Which is going to count as half double crochet for a corner. And then I work 2 more half double crochets into that very same stitch. So 2 more half double crochets in the same stitch. And this is my first corner cluster. I will chain 2 for the corner. And now I will skip the next stitch here, and I will move on to the next one, and I'll create another cluster of half double crochets in there. So 3 half double crochets into this stitch as well. Oops, my yarn split there. Let's do that one again. All right, and here is my first corner. Now for the side, I'm not gonna make any clusters for this round. I'm just gonna skip the next 2 stitches, so 1 and 2, and I'm gonna start my next corner in the 3rd stitch. So a cluster of half double crochets into the 3rd stitch. There's my corner cluster, or half of a corner, first cluster. I'll chain 2. I skip 1 stitch in the middle of the corner, and I work another cluster of 3 half double crochets in the next one. So in the middle of the corner, we skip 1 stitch, and on the sides, we skip 2 stitches between the clusters. All right, there's my corner number 2. And then on the side, again, I will skip 2 stitches, 1 and 2. And in the 3rd one, I work 3 half double crochets. And I chain 2. I skip 1 stitch in the middle of the corner. And then I work another cluster of 3 half double crochets to complete this corner. And now on the side, I will just skip 2 stitches, 1 and 2. And in the stitch number 3, I will start my next corner. So 3 half double crochets here. I chain 2 for the corner, and then I skip 1 in the middle of the corner and another cluster in the stitch number 2. So just have double crochet clusters on this round. Okay, and now this is my last side, and if I've counted my stitches correctly, I have 1 and 2 stitches here before that initial chain 2 where I started the round. And here again, since these are half double crochets, I like to go in the second chain stitch here, or second stitch from the bottom, and slip stitch there. And now I will slip stitch my way to this next corner. So just slip stitching into these stitches here on the outside. I know some people start their next round there for granny squares. For some reason I always like to start in the corner, so just like so many other things, this is my personal preference. Okay, I'm here at the start of this corner space, and I'll chain 2 here. And let's see what we have so far. Pull those petals down, pull the corners a little bit so that we can see what we have. Okay, so now we are starting to see the square. Now I have these 2 top petals here on that side, and then these 3 bottom petals here, and the flower is really nicely positioned in the middle, straight in the middle. And now the rest of the square is actually going to be super easy. So we're only going to be working clusters of double crochet stitches for 3 more rounds. So granny stitches all around the square. No more counting, because now we already have these clusters here as a base. We don't need to be counting any individual stitches or skipping anything or anything like that. So I'm here in this first corner. I chain 2 stitches, and I'm going to work 2 clusters of double crochet into this corner space. And that chain 2 there works or counts as my first double crochet. Some people like to chain 3 for a double crochet there. If that's what you prefer to do, please, you do you. This is just a personal preference again. Okay, first cluster of double crochets. I chain 2 for the corner, and I work 3 more double crochets into this space. And that's my first corner for this round. And now for the side, I will also work a cluster of double crochet. So I'll just go straight into that space between these 2 clusters of the previous round. And I work 3 double crochet stitches into that space. There we go. And then I'll work my next corner. So 2 clusters of double crochet separated by a chain 2. So there's my first cluster. I chain 2. And then 3 more double crochet stitches here. There we go. All right, Let's see what I got so far. I have those two corners and one side. And this is how we're going to work all around the square. So go ahead and work around yours, working those clusters of 3 double crochet on the sides, and in the corners you'll do 2 clusters separated by a chain 2. So work all around and meet me back here. All right, I have worked all around and I'm at the end of my round. I'm going to change colors here, so I'm going to do the same as I've done here, so the leaves and then 2 rounds with the border color, but of course you can do whatever you prefer to do. So I'll just close this round. Here I like to go to the first stitch kind of on the outside, slip stitch there to close the round, and chain 1, and then I break my yarn. Alright, so I'm just gonna go ahead and attach my new color. I'm using this brown for the border, again with a slip knot. And again, if you want to keep going with that same color, you can do that. You can also do like in this one here, I've done only 1 around with the border color, so you can do whatever you like. Okay, and I'll just attach my yarn here into this corner. Pull it tight. And I'll start my next round from this corner. So chain 2 counts as a double crochet for me. And 2 more double crochets for this cluster. Chain 2, and then another cluster of double crochet stitches into the same corner space. Here we go. That's my first corner for this round. And then I'll just work clusters of double crochet into these spaces between the clusters of the previous round. So I'm doing the exact same thing as I did on the previous round. The only difference is that as our square keeps growing, we'll always have 1 more cluster on each side. So just double crochet clusters here. I'm gonna let you go ahead and work all around your square. So just clusters of double crochet, and in the corners 2 clusters separated by a chain 2. All right, I have finished that round, and I'm just going to close the round with the slip stitch here. Again, here I like to go to the first stitch on the outside and slip stitch, and then I slip stitch my way to the next corner. And I'm gonna work 1 more round for this one. So I'll start the next round here, or the last round here. Chain 2, 2 more double crochet stitches for this cluster. Then I chain 2 and 3 double crochets for the second cluster of this corner. Here we go, there's my corner. Exactly the same as the previous 2 rounds. We'll work granny stitches all around. So clusters of double crochet. Clusters of double crochet into each one of these spaces here on the side, and then in the corners 2 clusters separated by a chain 2. So feel free to go ahead and work around yours and meet me back here. All right, I am at the end of my last round, so I'm just gonna go ahead and slip stitch here again into this first stitch there, kind of on the outside. And then I'll chain 1 and I can break my yarn. And fasten off. And there is my violet granny square. As we can see, the flower really nicely sits straight in the middle with those 2 larger petals on top, and the 3 bottom petals here on the other side. I've made this in 4 different colorways because it's the state flower of 4 different states. And I'd love to see what kind of a square you ended up making. So if you're posting pictures of it on Instagram, please tag my account. It's Wildflower and Stitch. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now the only things, of course, we have left with our square is weaving in the rest of those ends, which mostly I've taken care of, and then blocking the square. But otherwise we're all done. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave me a comment. It really does help me a lot. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.